Well, good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here, wilhitewx.com. We have winter weather advisories out here again tonight for the area. Boy, we cannot catch a break. And I'd love to be able to say for you snow lovers that it's going to be for some snow moving in, but unfortunately it's for freezing rain once again. My goodness, how many times can we get icing events in 1 year? You can see everything here in purple underneath of a winter weather advisory here. I'm recording this video at 6:55 Central Time here on Saturday, February the 10th. This is for overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. And there is a chance that maybe you could see a little bit of snow up here on the far side of this maybe, but honestly for the vast majority of this, it's going to be for freezing rain or the good old ZR precipitation type as you'll sometimes see it on weather maps. It's not, the good news is it's not going to be a significant freezing rain event, but it, nonetheless, there will be some there. Let me show you future radar, give you an idea of what's going on here. This is the high res data. Most of the showery activity has stayed down into Kentucky. It's avoided Indiana today for the most part. We've had a spotty shower here and there, but not really much is lit up on radar. As you go through the night, you can see there are some indications that we get a little light freezing rain or a little bit of showery activity. Again, a little bit of light snow shower activity very far onto the north of that. And as you go through the night, you notice that the latest high-res data really doesn't give much at all for southern Indiana in the way of this. And so if I were to kind of angle this just off of the way the high-res data is doing it, that was a terrible line here. Let me try to draw this a little bit better here. If you are anywhere north of this line, then you got some wintry issues. If you are south of that line, then the latest high-res data gives you no wintry issues whatsoever. So it's going to be a very sharp split in the state. Could you see some wintry precipitation even down in here? Yes, you could. High-res data may not be completely right, hence why you have a winter weather advisory listed out. And going down here as far as it is, I really think it may be a little bit too far to the south on this based on what the data is suggesting here. If we look at actual temperatures of where they're going to forecast to go overnight, so first off, here's where we are about right now. We're in the mid-30s across the area. You get freezing as you get down into this blue color and below up here. And so as you go through the night, you notice here that blue color actually shifts a little bit more towards the north. And we get a little bit more of that warmer air shifting in. And, we're at 37 here during the overnight hours in Evansville, 40 in Louisville, even 33 potentially up there in Bloomington. You shift this down, and by the time you are waking up tomorrow morning, here's about 7 a.m. Eastern, 6 Central Time tomorrow morning. You're still at 34 in Evansville. You're right at freezing in Vincennes, 33 up in B-Town, 36 over there in Columbus, 32 up there in Indy. So, it's going to be very hard anywhere south of that red line to be able to get much in the way of freezing rain if this data is right. And as you go through the day, we do cool down as that front pulls past us a little bit. But what you'll notice is the activity is pretty much gone by the time we start to cool down with this. And so that's a good thing. It's not going to be a significant amount of freezing rain as far as the winter weather advisories go. The Weather Service is suggesting maybe 1/10 of an inch at the most. I think that's way overshooting it. I don't think most of us are going to have much of any issues at all with this. You could see some slight freezing drizzle. Could make a little bit of a glaze over something, but it's not going to be a whole lot for most of you. And again, if I had to outline sort of where it is, I would say north of that red line, approximately there is where you're going to have the issues. So if you are watching my video from anywhere down in here, I'm not really expecting much issues for you during the overnight hours. That's not to say that you couldn't get in on this, but you're less likely to. The way things look right now as it shakes out with the high-res data. And by the way, if you are saying, boy, it seems like we've had a lot of freezing rain events, remember it is a La Nina year. If we just look at the winter forecast that I released back on November the 22nd, you can find this at wilhitewx.com. There's my final and preliminary winter forecast there. They've not been perfect winter forecasts by any means, but they've been reasonable. And as you go through this, if you scroll down to near the bottom and you look at the highlights, one of the things that I said here, the last bullet point, La Nina years are notorious for bringing ice storms around here. Not saying we'll for sure see an ice storm, but don't be surprised if we do. I think the odds are slightly higher this year. Boy, did I nail that. All the way back in November, the data pointed to me like we could end up with more of an ice threat this year than we did snow threats. And honestly, that's what it has been. We have had a number of freezing rain or sleet kind of events around here. But we've really only had here in southern Indiana and into Kentucky really only one significant event that gave us any snow to speak of. Out of this, actually two, they were just back-to-back events kind of featured in Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. And that's really all that we've had this year in terms of anything. Northern Indiana, central Indiana has had a few, but down here in southern Indiana, we just really haven't seen that. And quiet weather looks to stick around as we just take a look at the GFS here. You can see there again is that slight chance of some freezing drizzle through the area. At this point, it brings it a little further south than high-res data does. Generally, the GFS we don't look at too far when it gets closer. We look more at the high-res data. That moves out of here. We've got high pressure in charge, a pretty nice week, a nice warmer week coming up. I'll show you the numbers here for that in a minute. As we get into Thursday, there's a chance that we can get some slight little bit of some showers around the area. Nothing too significant with that. Then high pressure kind of moves in there, and maybe on Saturday we get a little bit more here into the area, but Sunday, Monday, that's whenever we get another system moving into here. So it's going to be a mostly dry week. There's a slight chance of showers on Thursday, maybe lasting into Friday. The data keeps switching back and forth on that, but they don't look big. Next weekend, Sunday and Monday, that's whenever we could end up getting another shower chance. But again, we're 8-9 days away from that. And then beyond this, I just want to show you this. The data right now is hinting right at around the 20th of February here for an ice storm over once again in the area with snow on the backside. We are, let's say today's the 10th. This is 10 days away. So will that verify? You know, it's 10 days away. All we can say is the data shows it right now. 2 days from now, the data may show something completely different. So something that we're going to have to watch, although I will say the ensemble data has us a lot warmer than what this is. But if we get anything the way it looks, I would not be surprised if it's more ice than snow. That's the trajectory that we've seemed to be on this year. And if we just take a look then at the data for where we are going for much of the rest of February, remember last month, later on in the month, I was showing you some of the data, and the data was kind of hinting that it was going to be a cooler February coming up. And we've had some cool times here in early February, but we've started to move into a more milder phase. And watch this as you go throughout this. Look at this string of mild high temperatures as far as the eye can see here on the Euro data. A couple of lower days here, but overall it's mostly an above average kind of event. We're talking in the 60s later this week with some rain, and then, even next weekend. Remember the data is showing you around the 20th for that? Well, the Euro's wanting nothing to do with that. The Euro's wanting to take us to 55. If you look at the GFS ensembles, even for the 20th, the ensembles disagreeing there with the deterministic and taking us into the 50s there as well. So, the bottom line is we've got a more mild period coming up. Is there a chance that this is the end of winter and that we're looking at a more mild section? Not so fast. We do need to deal with the polar vortex. And the polar vortex is currently undergoing a big split. What you've got going on, this is the analysis from this morning, and what you've got going on is this massive ridge, this massive warmth building in here, and look at how elongated the polar vortex is here. And eventually, as you go forward in time here, it just literally cuts that off and splits it in two, such that you get this massive ridge building up at the pole, and the core of the polar vortex is displaced much further south. So you've got this displaced further south over here, just right around the Hudson Bay area. And as we go forward in time, you notice that kind of sticks around and never goes back to the north over the next 10 days. It just sort of wobbles around there a little bit. Now, if you're looking at this, you would say, well, Michael, wouldn't this mean a colder pattern for us over the next 10 days if the polar vortex is coming there? But you look at the data and you see, oh goodness, over the next 10 days, you see a pretty mild pattern. What's going on here? Keep in mind, the polar vortex resides way far up into the atmosphere. So if we do a little bit of meteorology, we live down here in what's called the troposphere. Troposphere is that lower level of the atmosphere. The polar vortex is up here in what we call the stratosphere. So there are actually a couple of polar vortexes. Sometimes I'll see a chart and I'll show you, it looks like a piece of the polar vortex has been dislodged and coming south. What I'm usually talking about there is what we call the tropospheric polar vortex. What I'm showing you in this data is actually the stratospheric polar vortex. This is the big boy right here. And the stratospheric polar vortex resides up here about 20 kilometers up into the atmosphere. And what goes on there eventually can mix further south. into the atmosphere, but it takes time. And so, yes, if that sticks around in a sustained manner for the next 10 days like that, it can send some colder air eventually down here into the tropopause and affect us, but it's going to take some time to get there. And so whenever I look at the data like this and I see it sticking around, and then I look at the data and I say, as I get later on here into February and with these become more questionable to me. I definitely think that we've got a moderation period here coming, and so that looks pretty reasonable to me. But as you get later on into the month, you get much more question marks as you get out into this side of things. Could we still be in the 50s this side of the month? Well, if you have a polar vortex that's split and dislodged that far south, one would think that eventually, as you get into the later part of the data here, that you would see those temperatures go down a little bit more than where they are right now. So that's a trend that we'll look for, but certainly it's not a guarantee at this point. Enjoy the moderation period here for the next several days, because it does look like that we're going to have a nice warmer pattern here overall. It's kind of chilly right now. It's going to be kind of chilly tomorrow, but as we get later into the week, again, we're looking at some pretty nice temperatures here. And again, topping possibly on Thursday with temperatures into the mid 60s around the area. And that's about 20 degrees above normal. So a warmer period coming, at least for a time. As we get past, say, the 20th or so, all bets are off right now. We'll just have to see what the polar vortex actually does, whether it can mix any of that colder air down to the surface. One thing I will say is this, is there a risk of us going below zero here in southern Indiana, Kentucky area? At this point in time, as late in the year as it's going to be, I doubt it. I really doubt it. Could we get down into the teens again as a result of that? Yes, absolutely. If the polar vortex can send the cold enough air mixing down into the atmosphere, yeah, absolutely, we can get into maybe the single digits again. But do we go below zero around here? I don't think you're going to get a snowpack. I'm not going to say that we are done with snow here in southern Indiana this year, but it's not looking hopeful for you snow lovers. I'm just being honest. It's not looking hopeful at all for much of anything throughout the rest of this winter, the way things look right now. Some icing events, possibly. We'll have to keep an eye on it. That's all I can tell you for now, folks. As we get a little bit later on into that period of time, all bets are off until we see what the polar vortex is going to do and how the models are going to react to this. I can tell you right now, they're not reading the effects on this probably as well as they should. And again, I think as you get into this period of time here after the 20th or so of February, you're going to see those numbers lower a little bit. That's just a best guess at this point. We'll see what it does. It's winter over. Don't count it out yet, but the nail might be in the coffin. We'll see. That's it for now, folks. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite. Again, winter weather advisory out for some of you, just for some light freezing drizzle here in southern Indiana. Really not a whole lot expected out of this. Could be a few slick spots. Just use some caution as you head out tomorrow morning.